this time in auction. One man and his music. Freddie Mercury's world comes to Sothebys.
You've got the public persona, the costumes, the lyrics, etc. But then the private side are the things that he chose for what he was going to have at home. It's been incredibly moving, learning about the man.
The life of a rock legend, public and private.
He was a very private person, but he had this fantastic stage persona, so you have this great dichotomy between the private man and the Queen frontman.
And inside the mind of the great pretender, musician, showman, singer, songwriter.
The most striking thing is that it was almost called Mongolian Rhapsody, and clearly Bohemian is much better.
They come as if on a pilgrimage, 3,000 or 4,000 people every day to Sothebys in London to glimpse, for the first and last time, the private world of Freddie Mercury. Here, at the height of his fame, Freddie Mercury would come to buy art at auction. Here, 32 years after his death from complications related to AIDS, that art, along with the contents of his London home, original handwritten lyrics of the songs like We Are the Champions, Don't Stop Me Now and Bohemian Rhapsody, which struck a chord with millions in the 1970s and 80s, costumes from the stage shows of Queen, the band for which he was the lead singer, and much, much more is at Sotheby's for a blockbuster sale which fills the whole building.
Right from the start, we used a mantra. What would Freddie do? Okay, so that was something we applied. Now, Freddie was no stranger to Sotheby's. He would get our catalogues in the morning with a cup of tea in bed, and he would go through and decide what he might be interested in buying. A discreet phone call would be made, an appointment out of hours would happen. Freddie would engage with our specialists and then partake in the auction. So, having those sorts of reference points, it had to be big. We feel we owed it to him.
He was, say many, the greatest lead singer in the history of rock music. Freddie Mercury was flamboyant in a way that set him apart from his contemporaries, but saw himself as two people, saying, "When I'm performing, I'm an extrovert, yet inside, I'm a completely different man."
You have a very extrovert stage act by any standards. Will you be able to go on with...
You mean I flaunt it?
You're over the top.
No one knew the other side of him better than Mary Austin, with whom he lived in the early 1970s. They remained the closest of friends until his death in 1991. To her, he left Garden Lodge, his 28-room house in Kensington, and its contents, and trusted her to do the right thing after his death.
His house was incredible, and I think for me, learning about that space taught me so much about Freddie and his ideas behind creating that perfect space. It was built for an artist couple, Cecil and Constance Ray. They created an enormous studio room within this house. Freddie in 1980 saw this studio room, and instead of an easel and a paintbrush, that's where my piano is going to be. So it was still a creative space. I think he appreciated the artistic spaces, the large spaces within there, the big windows, the perfect platforms for his art glass, the walls to fill, his canvas, if you like, to fill with his glorious things.
So here, straight from Garden Lodge, is that grand piano at which he worked on Bohemian Rhapsody. The sunglasses, his silver moustache comb, the big and the small.
You expect Freddie to have a piano because that's the tool of his trade. That's where the immortal moments in his musical career were created, where he gave birth to those incredibly memorable lyrics, music, songs. But actually the small things to me are as poignant and are essential in learning about the man in the round.
A 1941 Wurlitzer jukebox, which Freddie just had to have, and which lived in the kitchen, £15,000 to £25,000. the Japanese art he collected after he fell in love with the country during the Queen Tour of 1975. The crown and cloak Freddie commissioned from designer Diana Moseley while he was on Queen's Magic Tour in 1986, with its estimate of £60,000 to £80,000.
Diana Moseley, who made his costumes in the 80s, Freddie said, "I need a crown, I need a cape, and I need it now, darling." So she had to get to work very quickly, and she was sitting around her kitchen table making all these wonderful things with her sister and various friends, and they were stitching away. And then she got on a plane and took it to Paris, where Freddie was, of course, ensconced in the Georges V Hotel. And she brought it out, and he was absolutely thrilled. And apparently he put it straight on over his towel, put the crown on his head, and was like, "Something's missing, something's missing," and grabbed a banana from the fruit bowl as a microphone. And he said, "Now I'm ready." And he absolutely loved it, and of course wore it for the encore of every show throughout the Magic Tour. It was very important to Freddie that all his fans could see him, because in these huge stadiums, if you're right at the back, you're not going to see someone wearing a black costume. So Freddie deliberately chose whites and yellows, which would really pop on stage.
This is no ordinary auction. Alongside the usual catalogue, Sothebys have published a book which will itself become a collector's item, detailing an incredible life. Born Farrokh Bulsara in the British Protectorate of Zanzibar in 1946 to Parsi Indian parents who fled the revolution in 1964 and settled in England. Educated first in India, then in London, where his love of art was fostered at Ealing Art College. Years later, he would design the heraldic arms of the band Queen. Always involved with rock and roll, and eventually lead singer of a band called Smile, formed by guitarist Brian May and drummer Roger Taylor, which, with the addition of bassist John Deacon, became Queen.
It was an amazing time for us all, you know. It was just a very precious kind of interaction. And there were various culminating points, and Bohemian Rhapsody is obviously one of them. And we're all very fortunate that we lived through that and we shared that experience. He's an amazing story, you know. He is kind of rags to riches kind of guy, you know. A very shy boy. Developing himself, working on himself. He's a self-made man. You know, he made Freddie Mercury that we saw on stage. And it was a phenomenon. It's amazing. But within that, Freddie Mercury was kind of every man. He connected to all those people who were still shy and still wondering if they could express themselves. I think that's the key to Freddie. He gave people a channel to feel that they were okay.
Exactly 50 years after the release of Queen's debut album, as fans pay homage to Freddie Mercury all over the world, because this sale has been on tour in New York, Los Angeles and Hong Kong before coming to London, it's a moment to reflect on the career of this remarkable entertainer and to hear from those who captured the Queen years.
He was very shy, so he went from one extreme to the other, but he's not the only one. I mean, there were a lot of people who were quite introvert off stage. David Bowie, very, very quiet off stage. But on stage he was what he was. But no one was as extrovert as Freddie on stage, and then have the polar opposite. And he'd be very shy and very quiet, but when he was with people that he knew, and he knew them all, let's say there weren't any outsiders, then he would become a bit more flamboyant.
I know you don't think this, but a girl is going to pop out of that. Try it. It's not big enough for me.
Star photographer Dennis O'Regan was lucky enough to document Freddie Mercury and Queen on celluloid. He was there. Those who turn up at Sotheby's didn't have that privilege. Many were born after Freddie Mercury died. Yet still they come, a steady stream throughout the month-long preview. Why?
It's about triggers, isn't it, in life? You might have been at Live Aid. You might have held your first child. You might, to a particular song, your first dance at a wedding. At school, you might remember an anthem. You might have been watching something on the TV and heard a Queen soundtrack. All of those things are like dominoes or triggers within, I don't know, your head. You think the object takes on such great resonance when you add that in. You know, It's special, it's almost undescribable, but it feels palpable. We feel it in our galleries at the moment. People have been really emotional. It's such a connection with such an extraordinary man.
As fans and a curious public fill the galleries at Sothebys in London for a month-long preview of Freddie Mercury's possessions, it's worth remembering that the auction world has been here before. 2016, the David Bowie sale, for which they queued around the block, also at Sotheby's, when Bowie's secret art collection, including works by Jean-Michel Basquiat, Frank Auerbach and Damien Hirst, fetched over £30 million. Bowie, of course, was a friend of Freddie Mercury. Think of the 1981 #1 track Under Pressure, and Bowie appeared with Queen at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert in 1992. Turned out that he too had an eye for art.
What's amazing about it is he bought the artist that meant something to him.
For £6,200,000. Thank you very much indeed, sir. £6 million too. Congratulations.
2019, they queued at Christie's for the collection of George Michael, which raised £11 million.
George Michael was an artist, and when we talk about artists, we talk about actors, we talk about musicians, we talk about painters, all kind of walks of life. So an artist is an artist at heart.
And 3 months later in New York, rock fans filled the sale room at Christie's to bid for the guitar collection of Pink Floyd's David Gilmour, when his Black Stratocaster, estimated at just $150,000, sold for nearly $4 million.
Your moment. Sold.
All of which shows the love and affection that exists for artists whose music and words have been the backcloth to our lives, and the interest in what they leave behind. In the case of Freddie Mercury, that includes costumes from the most famous of Queen performances.
This is one of Freddie's key costumes. It's the beautiful white Mercury wing worn for the Bohemian Rhapsody video, and he had 3 of these with 2 little boleros, and we had to work out which one was worn in the video. And the reason you can tell is the stitching on the back of this one is different. And we were lucky enough to speak to Wendy de Smet, who made them, and she was telling us about Freddie's input. And it was her idea to put the wings on, but it was Freddie who wanted to look like the god of Mercury. And it was also the black and the white was very important to Freddie. It was the fight between good and evil. And he had his black Queen costumes, and this is the white Queen, or the white wing. Initially, the wing panels here were put on by Wendy with Velcro, but Freddie didn't feel that was stable enough because he moved so much on stage. He wanted them to stay on securely. So he hand-stitched them on himself and put the little stirrups on the bottom just to secure everything. So he was very hands-on with his costumes. We regard these costumes as museum-worthy, so we would hope they would end up in some sort of museum so people can carry on enjoying them.
Enjoy them? What about the Spanish fan who's flown in specially wearing the Freddie Mercury cat waistcoat he had made for his wedding?
Yeah, that's right. I landed this morning from Spain and I'm flying back to Spain tomorrow.
Well, thank you so much. Amazing.
The costumes may be among the big ticket items in this sale. The estimate for the Mercury wing catsuit is £50,000 to £70,000. But many of those who file through the galleries at Sotheby's, laid out to resemble some of the rooms at Freddie Mercury's London home, Garden Lodge, have come to get a glimpse of his very private world, to see only what those closest to him saw. Fame brought fortune, and fortune allowed Freddie to make his dream come true. I want to be surrounded by splendid things.
It's very easy to think, the memorabilia, the awards, the fun bric-a-brac, his cat-shaped cookie jar. But actually, there are things of great quality, particularly in the Japanese world. And there's some superb bits of furniture. Behind me, you can see a wonderful chinoiserie piano by John Wardwood. This was acquired by Freddie in the late 1970s in New York, and it still has its New York shipping label on it. But Freddie never really saw this as an instrument to compose upon. It was a platform for display. It was part of a complete installation of chinoiserie-style furniture. How do you put a price on love? And we know that a superb John Broadway is a valuable instrument anyway, and decorated like that makes it special. This dates from the 1920s, 1930s. But it being Freddie's piano, you know, where could it go? What might it do? It's anyone's guess at the moment. It's been a challenge valuing things. And then you add in the piano, the Yamaha, his most treasured possession, the most significant thing in the collection. Who knows? Who knows?
One by one, the splendid things, as Freddie Mercury called them, come up for auction. A Lily table lamp by Tiffany from around 1910 sells for £61,000 against an estimate of £8,000 to £12,000. An Alicante vase from the 1920s by the great French glassmaker René Lalique, signed by him. Estimate £6,000 to £10,000, sale price £82,500. Lalique was working at the same time as Antonin and Auguste Dôme, and this vase, with its vines and snails, was one of Freddie's favourites. Now it races past its top estimate of £6,000 to sell for just under £46,000. The paintings which hung in Garden Lodge, Pablo Picasso's Jacqueline au Chapeau Noir, number 3 in an edition of 50, £190,000. And oil by James Jacques Joseph Tissot of his Muse and Mistress Kathleen Newton, a piece carefully positioned in Garden Lodge. Freddie bought this only a month before his death, which makes it particularly poignant. £482,600. That 1941 Wurlitzer jukebox, £406,000, 20 times the estimate. His iconic white sneakers, £127,000. And so it goes on. The Garden Lodge dining book, see the signatures of guests such as Montserrat Caballé, Tim Rice and Elaine Page, sells for £44,000. That much-loved John Broadwood grand piano he bought in New York, the estimate £40,000 to £60,000, the sale price £444,000. And his silver moustache comb. The auction house put an estimate of £400 to £600 on this, the smallest of lots. Bidders had other ideas. For this tiny but powerful connection to one of rock's superstars, the online bid climbed to £100,000. Crazy little things and the power of celebrity. Sothebys have called their mega sale Freddie Mercury a world of his own. Few knew the public face of that world better than the photographer Dennis O'Regan. It's his classic image of Freddie Mercury on stage which heads up the publicity for the auction.
You're always going for a definitive shot, and you want Freddie doing a twist, and a lot of them he looked a bit odd in the photographs. He didn't come out well in a lot of pictures, but when you got the right shot it was incredible.
Dennis O'Regan's images of Queen have entered the public consciousness, immortalised in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and on everything from coins to stamps. And on the minds of those who attended the 700 Queen concerts over the years. 72,000 at Wembley for Live Aid in 1985, 200,000 at Nebworth Park in 1986 for what would be the band's last concert.
One of the things that came out of that tour was Queen's helicopter coming in over their last ever crowd, and I'm in a helicopter next to them, and capturing that piece of history, which it wasn't really at the time, because no one knew it would be the last show. And I think that's I'm very proud of that, because it was very difficult to do. The film crew chopped off the front and back of the helicopter, and I had to make sure I had the right lens, that the helicopter was in the right place, so the audience was below their helicopter. So that worked out really well. And again, no one realised. Things became very strange after that show. But yeah, I mean, I became a huge Queen fan. That's what it was, really.
1986 had also seen an audience of 80,000 in Budapest.
He communicated with the audience, and a lot of people definitely don't. It's almost as though everyone else is just singing through a megaphone. whereas he was speaking to people individually. It's almost like that.
There are certain things that I use in my stage act, which I know automatically I'll get a certain reaction because I know I've been there before. But over here, it's going to be, it's like no man's land. You know? So, I mean, but I'm going to try them all. You know?
You could watch him speaking to a huge crowd as though he was speaking to each one of them, and they were all there as his personal guests almost.
There may be no better example of that than in Budapest, where Freddie sang a national folk song.
What he did on the day was wrote them on the palm of his hand. So when he's going like this to everybody, have a quick look. That was something the audience took to heart. So that was, again, was a sweet thing to do. And it was just yet another connection with the audience.
Even behind the Iron Curtain, they went mad about the Queen albums. It's reckoned that the total worldwide sales of Queen records exceeds 300 million. But no one in Hungary, let alone the rest of the world, could have realised the significance of what Freddie Mercury, famously shy about doing television interviews, told Hungarian television on the night of that concert.
Budapest is going to see us the first time.
Yeah. So you look at it as the beginning of your friendship with Hungary and with Budapest, and it may last long as Queen will last.
If I'm still alive, I will come back. You know.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Fine.
5 years later, Freddie Mercury would be dead, but not forgotten.
So this is taken from the end of Freddie's piano. And it's blurred, but I just like it because Freddie will have thrown his head back. And it's just quite fun. He's got his pass on, I've just noticed. This is Slane Castle in Ireland, which is one of the great venues. But it had poured with rain, and now it was sunny and warm. But by this time, the whole crowd was drunk. So Freddie had to remonstrate a couple of times because they were so badly behaved. And this is... again, a bit more unusual with Freddie. I called this outfit the Spider-Man outfit. These trousers are up for sale at the auction. Just quite like that, just because of the pose and the way that I've shot it. It's straight towards him. And then we have the print for the stamp, of the stamp. I think that was my definitive shot of him with the crown of the fist up. Of course, he knows I'm there taking it, so he might have held that for a few seconds longer than he would have done. Brian's legs, really like that one. This would have been Bohemian Rhapsody, and then this is Freddie at Wembley Stadium when, because I'd been on tour, this is in the first 3 songs when all the photographers are allowed in. And because I'd been on tour, I decided just to turn it around the other way and take a picture out towards the audience rather than straight on as everyone else was doing. So that's what that was, plus the moody sky. And it's almost as though Freddie's shaking his fist at the sky as well. At the time, here's a Queen tour, there'll be another one next year. Here's a Stones tour, there'll be another one next year, which is still true. Whoever you went to see, they were always around. And then they became a rarity. They didn't tour as much because they didn't have to. And then they started dying. And people realised that there was nothing left. There was no replacement. There was no one like David Bowie or Mick. I mean, all 3 of them really. David, Mick, Freddie. There's no one like them now.
There is something else that makes this sale special. Words. Of the 17 songs on Queen's Greatest Hits album, Freddie Mercury wrote 10. And his are the words which have gone down in the history of rock and roll. Who knew that the 6-minute Bohemian Rhapsody, which started life on a sheet of paper aboard a British Midland Airways flight, could have ended up being called Mongolian Rhapsody?
First drafts are always fascinating, whether they're by James Joyce or Beethoven or Freddie Mercury. I've seen first drafts by all 3 of those people, and Freddie's are up there in terms of interest. The most striking thing is that it was almost called Mongolian Rhapsody, and clearly Bohemian is much better. and he saw that, and in it went as Bohemian Rhapsody. Every movement, if we can describe the parts of the song in those terms, is there, including the operatic middle, but also not just the lyrics, but he habitually composed at the piano, and I think you can see the piano behind me that he worked on. So they're little doodles around the words to do with the sort of chords that he would use. He didn't write music in staves, as a classical composer would have done, but the lyrics and the music were obviously bubbling around in his head together, which I find fascinating. And you can see some of the harmonies he's working out as he's writing, but I mean, 6 minutes was thought to be wholly uncommercial by broadcasters, but partly because of his relationship with Kenny Everett, the disc jockey, they got quite a lot of airtime, and then it blew up from there.
Bohemian Rhapsody, with its nod to opera, its changing tempos and styles, its enigmatic lyrics and its multi-layered voices, has been rated the greatest #1 of all time. It certainly set Queen apart from their contemporaries, maybe their best remembered piece.
Here's a song that no one's going to play on radio because it's twice as long as it should be. But it was such an incredible song. Obviously, there was the whole Kenny Everett, where Kenny Everett played it and said, "My spine's just turned to custard," you know. And the more he played it, the more people went mad. And this is a classic, and it's odd. I don't know. So that was a huge rule breaker, because this is the length of the song, take it or leave it. And the radio stations were going to leave it.
The question for the specialists at Sotheby's is, how do you value something like this?
Well, there are comparables. There are other rock and roll lyrics which have come up in the past, which gives us an indication. But I mean, lots of people would consider Bohemian Rhapsody to be the greatest rock song ever written. So it requires a bit of imagination to put an estimate on it, and we'll see what happens on the day.
Got £1.2 million to spare? If so, you're in with a chance to acquire a unique piece of music history. But the truth is, as with all celebrity sales, for some fans, the sky's the limit.
I think it's unprecedented in our 280-year history at Sotheby's, and certainly dedicating our whole building and the expert departments involved and the processes that we've gone through to get to this stage. I've never seen anything like it. It's incredible thinking about that legacy, and I'm focused very much on the decorative and fine art, but actually there's this huge, bigger thing. And it's very, very interesting thinking about him. I think Freddie always saw his legacy as his music. I think he'd be quietly amused by us loving and enjoying the glorious clutter, those are his words, that he chose to have around him.
As the month-long preview of Sotheby's Freddie Mercury auction draws to a close, they're queuing round the block in Bond Street, singing Queen's songs and hoping they won't be turned away. 140,000 visitors in all, a staggering figure that far exceeds the auctioneer's expectations. Some of Freddie's friends have mixed feelings about the razzmatazz around selling his possessions, but it's clear that many who've made a special journey to see them have done so not just through curiosity, but because the Queen frontman meant so much to them and does still.
I love Freddie, I love Queen, so I couldn't not come today.
You're in that moment of like being with Freddie.
It's a very good feeling. It confirms the person that he was.
I wrote in the visitor's book, it said, "Who wants to live forever?" which was one of his lines, and I think he's achieved it.
On the 6th of September, one day after Freddie Mercury would have been 77, thousands watch on social media. But it's tickets only and black tie for seats in the room at the first of the many sales of things which represent the life of one of rock and roll's great performers. Oliver Barker, chairman of Sotheby's Europe, more used to sales of old masters and modern art than rock and roll memorabilia, presides over the big hitters in Freddie Mercury's collection. We shall see which pieces mean the most to the fans. Is it the door to Garden Lodge, Freddie's West London home, filled with scribbled tributes from grieving fans after his death? The estimate, £15,000 to £25,000.
Thank you, Henry. It's 4 of you in it at the moment at £140,000. You bidding at the back, madam, at £140,000. Sure? at £140,000.
It takes almost half an hour to sell the garden door as the price soars above the estimate.
At £250,000. Anyone else at 250? 260. Thank you, Catherine. All on this side of the room again, still at £260,000. Anyone else at 260?
David MacDonald, head of sale, bidding for someone on the telephone, loses his connection. Every auctioneer's nightmare.
Still with Catherine.
But it's worth calling back because...
So the hammer is going to come up now for the first time. 320,000. 325,000. Thank you. Thank you very much. Catherine, are we going to go on? You out? You sure? At 325,000, David MacDonald, it is yours. Sold. Thank you very much.
Add the buyer's premium, and the full sale price is just under £413,000. They're on the phones and online from over 60 countries, but there are plenty of bidders in the room. Is there anyone here who will pay between £800,000 and £1.2 million for the lyrics of Bohemian Rhapsody, the song that almost ended up as Mongolian Rhapsody? There is. These unique pages sell for...
At £1,100,000. Sold. Thank you very much indeed.
Which, with the buyer's premium on top, is £1,375,000. And later, the lyrics for We Are the Champions will fetch £317,000.
And lot number 28.
What will bidders pay for the silver snake bangle which Freddie wore in the Bohemian Rhapsody video in 1975, a video that's been viewed 1.6 billion times on YouTube? The estimate? £7,000 to £9,000.
It's with the online bidder at 160, 170,000 now. At £170,000. 180 is in a new place. Thank you, George. At £180,000. Here it is, 180. Give me 190,000. Thank you so much. 190. At 190,000. Here it is, at 190. At 190 is bid online at £190,000. At £200,000 now is bid. Thank you, at £200,000. Here it is at £220,000 now. At 220, 240,000. Thank you, sir. At 240,000. 260,000 now. At 260. 380 now, in a new place. Thank you, Nikita, at 380,000. £400,000. Thank you. 480,000. £500,000. At 520,000. 550,000. At 550. At 550,000. Here it is. No regrets. At 550,000. Last chance. Anybody else want to come in at 550,000? Here we go with the brochure. One last time. Wave goodbye to it. At 550,000. Wonderful object in the sale. And we're selling at 550,000. Here it goes at Sotheby's. Stole. Thank you very, very much.
With the premium,
thank you.
That's $698,500.
The Queen #1 gold brooch from 1975. Cartier, of course.
And the Queen #1 gold brooch, one of only 4 made to celebrate the success of Bohemian Rhapsody. £4,000 to £6,000 is the estimate. The sale price?
70,000. Gentlemen here seated at £70,000. 75 now online. 75, sir. 80,000. At 80,000. You bidding, sir? At 80,000. 80,000. At 80,000. At £80,000. Still with the online bidder at £80,000. 85,000. Thank you, Milap. At 85,000. On the telephone at £85,000 now. £85,000. It's 90,000 is bid. Thank you so much. At 90,000. Against you, Milap, at 90,000. 95,000 is bid. At £95,000. At 95,000. Say 100,000. It's Milap's bidder. Your bid, sir. At £95,000. Give me 100. 100,000 is bid on the telephone here at £100,000. At £100,000. At £100,000. Here, online. Milap, it's against you, sir, at £100,000. Elena, it's against you too. At £100,000. Still with the online bidder. At £100,000. Anybody else at £100,000? This great legacy of this extraordinary record, great piece of cultural history at £130,000. There it is, at £130,000. You out? Thank you, sir, anyway. It's with the online bidder. I am selling it here at £130,000 to the online bidder. It's against the room and selling. Unique example at £130,000. Sold. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Which sets the tone for Freddie's white Mercury wing catsuit, valued at between 50 and 70,000. It sells for 127,000. What price then for the baby grand piano, which was at the very centre of Freddie Mercury's private life in Garden Lodge, where he worked on Bohemian Rhapsody? 32 years after his death, this bit of musical history was carefully packed for the short journey to the sale room in New Bond Street, unpacked with love and seen by the 140,000 people who filed through Sothebys galleries in the month before this evening auction. Notwithstanding its role in the creation of Queen's most famous songs, are the auctioneers being realistic in setting an estimate of between £2 and £3 million, even if Mary Austin, moved by the homage fans have paid to her friend, has removed the reserve?
50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000, 90,000, 100,000 pounds. Thank you very much. 100,000. Who else? 100,000, 110, 120,000, 130,000. Thank you very much. 140 at 140,000. Here it is, 140. 150 is bid online at 150,000. 160, 170 is against you now at 170,000. 180 is bid online. 190, 200,000, 240,000. 260,000, at 280,000, 300,000, 500,000 pounds, at 500,000, 550,000 bid online at 550,000 pounds, at 600,000 pounds, at 700,000, give me 50, at 700,000 pounds. Here it is at 700,000. 750,000 is bid, at 800,000, 850,000, 900,000 pounds now, £1 million. Fair warning now, 1 million. 1,000,002. Give me 3, please. 1,003,000. Thank you. 1,004,000. Here it is at 1,004,000. Do you want to come in at 1,400,000? No. And selling it here at Sotheby's for the baby grand. It's £1.4 million. The hammer is up. I'm selling it here. Final warning at 1,400,000. Sold to you. Thank you very, very much.
Which leaves the thing that came at the end of Freddie Mercury's performances with Queen on the Magic Tour, and will be at the end of this one, the crown and cloak designed for him by Diana Moseley. After all we've seen in this extraordinary sale, the estimate of £60,000 to £80,000 seems, well, on the low side.
75,000, 80,000, thank you. 85,000 pounds now. 90,000 is bid already at 90,000. At 95,000, 100,000, 110,000 is bid online. 120,000 I have with the commission bid at 120,000 pounds now. At 120,000, 130 is in a new place. 140 is my bid, sir. At 140,000. 140, give me one more, sir. 140, give me 5, sir. 145, 150 is my bid, sir. Take the bid to 155. 155, I'm out, sir. It's your bid at 155. It's against you online as well. Gentleman's bidder at 155. At £155,000. There it is. 160 ahead of you, Catherine, at 160. And, sir, will you give me 5? 165. Thank you very much indeed, at £165,000. 170 is bid against you. At £170,000. £200,000.
It's not lost on bidders that the 1986 Magic Tour included Queen's last concert at Nebworth. It gives the crown and cloak an added cachet.
It's here in the room at 400,000. You're going to go on. Do you want to say 10? At £400,000. Here it is. I have to respect the process, sir. At 400,000. For 10, 410,000. Give me 20. For 20, it's bid again. Thank you, sir. 420,000. Let's try 30 again. In the room at 420,000. 480,000 pounds. 490,000. 500,000 pounds. Thank you very much indeed, sir. It's your bid. It's a gentleman's bid. It's your bid, sir. In the room. Fair warning to you online. I'm bringing the hammer up in this great historic costume. The crown and the cloak. At 500,000. It's selling. Back to you, sir.
Add the buyer's premium, and the person who's bought Freddie Mercury's best-known costume has paid £635,000. In all, the evening sale realises 12.2 million, some of which will go to 2 charities involved in the fight against AIDS. And there are still another 1,000 lots up for grabs in the following days online. For a whole month, London has been consumed by Freddie Mercury mania. And the auction at Sothebys comes just days after a sellout concert to mark what would have been his 77th birthday and to celebrate 50 years since the first Queen album. A concert staged in Montreux, the Swiss town where he kept an apartment in which he could get away from it all, and where a statue of him bears the simple inscription, "Lover of life, singer of songs."
Young people, they can't see anyone like Freddie Mercury. Doesn't matter where they go, what they do, they're not going to see it. So they look back at that and think, well, here's a guy who can really perform. I suppose it was the golden age, you know, when you look back. But who was to have known that at the time?
Our favourite literary monsters are coming out from under the bed in part 2 of Wonderland Gothic, new on Sky Arts Tuesday night at 9.